This is Paul, 102 Digital Monday. On a Monday, Karen Nunez Tesheira hosts the program Hard Talk right here on Power 102 Digital. We have some special guests, and it is the part two of last Monday's edition of Hard Talk. Good afternoon, Karen. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon to you, David McIntyre. And of course, yes, we say it's part two because I don't think that while the question, I still think that the question, the major question, still needs to be revisited. And of course, all the issues that arose out of that we were not able to fully explore because of, surprisingly, because of time constraints, because there was so much to unpack and there were things that I wasn't able to. I didn't ask because I knew that we didn't have the time. But I know that I have two very able guests with us, and I am delighted, and I'm not exaggerating. I was very delighted when, and actually, had some encouragement. So why don't you have these gentlemen back? It was really a show that was well. A number of comments, all very positive, in the context of how people felt about the closure of the refinery, which is what we're going to be talking about. And of course, refinery is the one at Petrotrin. There were several others, but that was the refinery. But our guests, as we had them last week, and make sure I don't mix up the gentlemen, but they're both of equal importance, I can assure you. One is known for his freedom of information inquiries.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let me see that it is very effective in other areas if I'm reading the newspaper, but on another topic completely. That's not today's topic. So we have with us, as we had last week, Christopher Jackman, who is a Bachelor of Science from the University of the West Indies. Always take it out to UE because
Yes.
when my parents tried to persuade me to go off to good old London to do law, I begged them. I said, no, no, I would stay here. I would stay in the Caribbean. I'm a
Yeah.
true a person of the soil, Caribbean soil, beyond Trinidad and Tobago. But anyway, he was a project manager, engineer too, with the Petrotrin refinery until its closure in November 2018. He worked there for 11 years. And as he correctly
Yeah.
please said, I'm sure is a very um, a great asset to Recruitment Experts Limited. And I think I was really gracious of him last week, not only to correct me in terms of the question of his status there, but also to really show appreciation to his employers. So he is, I'm sure, tremendous asset to them. They're based in Chabonas. And of course, we have everybody knows the name. I don't know if everybody knows the face, but they know the name. Anthony Dobson sitting on there very quietly in the background. That's the kind of person. That's the kind of dangerous person you have to look out for. The quiet ones.
Jesus.
In general, yeah, I'm not saying about that about you,
Yeah.
Mr. Dobson. But generally speaking, the quiet ones are the ones who are thinking, and their minds are going 100 miles an hour. Why do you think they're not thinking? They're not only thinking, they past thinking, they're ready to act. And so he has been he is the branch secretary of the OWTU
Yes.
at Point de Paix branch, which is the main branch of OWTU. I still would say the most powerful union in Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, partly being in the energy sector, and at the beginning of our excursion or our history into the energy sector, certainly it was based on oil and crude oil production, and of course we branch off in different areas, but it's the energy sector we're here to talk about. The specific, not specific, we can talk a little of, but they are one we're going to be speaking about the refinery. And before I go on to the topic in more
Mhm.
detail and ask you please to lead us in our discussion. I just want to give Trinidad, I like to say I give a shout out, but it's not a shout out. Shout out is for good news. I want to extend my sympathy and empathy to the people of South Trinidad who are going through those tremendous heart. As I mean, it's every year. I mean, every year with the flooding in Pinal and Debe, and I looked up the number of areas that are affected by the flooding. And I'm not taking any sides on this because I don't come here wearing any hat when it comes to that. I come here as a nationalist, not a person of Trinidad and Tobago, and concerned about our people, every single one of them. And I do think it was not a kind comment, to put it mildly, It's about the lost city of Atlantis or some nonsense to
Yes.
minimize and to make almost to make a mockery of the suffering of the people, regardless of who they were. They're Trinidadians, right? And going down into those big number game. I mean, you can't say, it just was ridiculous. I don't know what the real numbers were, but I do know that the representative for that division corporation did have a point. I've even discussed it with, anyway, I won't say who, but a young person, a very young person. And, they said, but, what about the children? They couldn't go to school, could they? Their parents had to send them to stay by relatives, didn't they? If there was one road out and it was impassable, that means they couldn't go out to work. If they were daily paid workers and not paid monthly, that means they are being affected because they're not being paid for that day, or it's taken as a casual day. Or there's so many permutations to that issue, and the hardship, the pain, How could you make light of the lost city of Atlanta? How could you do that? This is the kind of thing, I mean, when when you're in politics, you don't have to remember. I really truly mean this. And I would say this is where I would get a little, but it's not political. It's just honestly, it's not really being political. It is that and I didn't understand it at the beginning, but I do understand it. And I understand it very well. And not only
Okay.
understand it, but know it to be true that you've got to love people. It has to be center and core. If you want to be a really successful, I don't know how you determine success, but if you want to be successful, you have to really love people. And if you love people, which is why you should have been in the job in the first place, then those kinds of things would not be, those sort of things shouldn't be said. So to the people of South Trinidad, I was a South girl for many years. It got my husband mad. I'd always say everything good came from South. I get so mad with me. He said only Carpsonians. I say even Miss Trinidad, Miss World from South. He used to get so mad at me about it. But it's true. Anyhow, so putting that aside, I see that David has done what he normally does, puts up the
Yeah.
numbers. And David, I love David to do it. He has such a nice talking voice. So if you can give the numbers, and then we'll get straight into the conversation with the two gentlemen.
Okay, thank you, Karen. The numbers to you can connect with us are 222-8255, 222-8255. Our toll-free number, 866-525-1009, toll-free, 866-525-1099. You can also send in your comments via YouTube and Facebook because we are streaming live.
Correct. Okay, so
Right.
I know we are going to start with the question that we started with last week, but I suspect for a lot of people, including myself,
Mhm.
and probably even I mean, you, when I say you, sorry, I mean OWTU and its representatives and Patriotic and the whole, all those persons involved in the refinery, past and before its closure and after its closure, and the people from South Marabella and environs, and going beyond that, beyond the fence, what they call the persons working on the fence line and their families and so on. I still don't think, and that is troubling, of the closure of the Petrotrin. Why was it closed? So I want you to just go through with the audience, with people, the reason that the government gave for closing the refinery, and if you can respond to each reason to show um, one, the value or lack of in those arguments, and one of the things that they have recently started saying is the foreign exchange issue. So I'll let you go through what were the reasons and what was Petrotrin? Who is Petrotrin? What was Petrotrin? And why was it closed down? And the reasons that were given to the population.
All right. Sure. Good afternoon again, Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Tesheira, thank you very much again for giving us another opportunity here to speak the truth to Trinidad and Tobago. Just want to emphasize here again that myself and Comrade Dobson, we have been speaking these issues for some time now. But it seems as though Trinidad and Tobago is now beginning to grasp because of the impact that it is having on their pocket and with respect to the situation of foreign exchange. All right. But to the question that you asked there, the Prime Minister would have given 3 reasons for the closure of the company. That is what they would have said. The first was with respect to the high cost and the difficulty to import crude. Crude was a challenge to bring into the country, and they made it out to seem as though it was something new. It was an expense that was not experienced in the past. And I believe where the misleading occurred was in the past, we produced a lot more crude oil locally. But it did not mean you can't tell the country that because our local crude production would have reduced, that crude importation was a problem. Since inception, Petrotrin would have been importing crude. So crude and the importation of crude.
I wanted to pause there because I think when you see, this is where maybe the lawyer in me too, huh? Okay?
Sure.
So this is where, that's why I'm talking to the public. Look at what you said. You said since inception of importing crude, yet you're saying in the same breath, the government used that said that was one of the reasons the difficult importing crude. So one of the things is, what do you mean since inception with importing crude? And secondly, what was the difficulty that they were now experiencing if they were always doing it in a doing it? So I just want to see.
Very good question. That's the questions that we like to hear. All right. So in Texaco days, the refinery would have, since Texaco days, the refinery would have been importing crude. In those times, our production would have been in excess of 150,000 barrels a day. Yet still, the throughput in the refinery in those days were around 300,000 barrels plus.
Ooh.
So we would have still had the need to import a significant amount of crude to meet the daily requirement of the refinery. At present, when the refinery was functional in 2018 and prior, the throughput was at around 160,000 barrels a day. But our crude oil production was anywhere between 50 to 70,000 barrels a day. And because of that, we had the need to import 100,000 plus barrels to keep the refinery at its maximum throughput, to make that 160,000 a day. Now, remember last time we spoke last week, we would have spoken about the issue of the revolving loans that had to be taken to finance the purchase of crude, right? And that really became a challenge in the later years of the refinery. That was never a challenge up till 2009. But when the burden of the 2 loans was put on the company, and our need now to finance those loans would have been our first priority, it put the refinery in a cash-strapped position where we would have now found it difficult to finance the purchase of crude up front. So what was required was for us to take loans. And when we take a loan, when you sell your product, you pay off the loan and you make your profit based on the difference between selling product and buying crude, right? Now, in the later years, because of the financial challenge with the loans, Petrotrin's financial status, its credit rating, was downgraded. So as a result of, with 2 already very large loans that we would have had to be paid, to take additional loans required a certain level of either high credit rating, or we would have needed a guarantee from the government at that point in time. So what would have happened, because of the situation with the debt burden on the refinery, we had to engage the government to assist us with short-term loans to finance the procurement of crude. Right?
At what stage was that?
Come again?
At what time? At what point was that needed? At what point?
Right. So that, that occurred mostly between 2016 to 2018. That was when the burden was really significant on the refinery itself. So he's latching onto that. And I don't know if it is he doesn't understand the issue, or he didn't understand the issue well at that time, but putting forward crude as being an issue was misleading the country.
Okay, well, I'm going to be the devil's advocate. I'm going to be the devil's advocate because and when I ask you this, it is because we need clarification. So therefore, there is the point that Petrotrin Refinery was importing crude oil all the time, because that's what it does. It refines crude oil. And that's what it had been doing. And I never knew that even in Texaco days, they were importing maybe twice as much crude oil as we had locally. They were importing that amount to refine, from what you just said. To get to 300,000 barrels, and if we are producing 150, then that means we're really importing a lot of crude oil. And it is a fact too that even now, under the current arrangement, the crude oil production is very low. It's like, I think, 55, 50, 47,000 barrels per day. Right, okay. So therefore, this is what you have to, this is what I think needs explanation then. So then, if it is that where the issue arose, all the time you're refining oil, and you've always been doing that, and you didn't have enough crude oil, even in Texaco days, which is why you've always been importing, because your job is to refine it to create different products, which you will let us know more about. We didn't get a chance to really get into that last time. But if you've always been doing that, it seems to me that the issue that you are saying is related to the gas to liquid project, that bullet point thing, because what was the loan you were paying off? What was the loan that you now found yourself saddled with, that now you had to take these loans? But what I can't understand, and I could explain it to the public, is that I think Mr. Randall, I hope I'm not misquoting him, because that leads to the foreign exchange point too, that you never had to go to the government foreign exchange, because the sale of the fuel, what you exported, you would earn a US dollar. So what I'm not understanding, or what I don't clarify, if it is that you're taking out loans to be able to service your debt obligation, which is the bullet point, I guess, which made people believe, well, made us believe it was 150,000 still, which you can clarify for us. If it was being, you meeting that obligation, but you also at the same time making foreign exchange from your export of the fuel, the oil that you refine to create all the different products, then why would you have found yourself in 2016, 2018 in a difficulty? I can't understand it. I'm not understanding how from yourself.
We can clarify that one. That one is a simple one. So the two bullet payments, 750 and 850 million, would have required a significant amount of US to finance. All right. So at one point in time, the debt servicing figure would have averaged US 1 billion per year. Right. That is a figure that we quoted. So the refining business is buying crude, selling products, and we making a profit based on the difference between the price of products and crude. Whatever that profit is in US currency, that is where we run our business. So in terms of expenses, the primary expense that we would have struggled to meet would have been the debt financing. All right. Now, in the times of the partnership in the early years, the oil price was very high. So the margin was so good that we could have paid our debts from the bullet payments, as well as we could have financed the procurement of crude. All right. But when the oil price plummeted and the margins dropped, we reached a point where our priority still remained on a year-to-year basis to pay the mortgage, to pay the bullet payments installment first. When that is done, whatever remaining funds we have, if that is unable to buy sufficient crude to maintain the 160,000 barrels a day throughput, we will now have to take a loan to acquire US currency to purchase that crude. Right? Knowing that when we sell the refined products, we will still make a profit. All right? So you understand where the challenge would have come. The challenge would have come.
You're earning a foreign exchange. You are earning your foreign
Yes.
exchange then. That's what
The
you were doing.
nature of the refining business involves earning foreign exchange. So once the refinery would not have been saddled with those debt burdens, and I think that is the point that people don't really see. Financing of the purchase of crude and all our operations would have been significantly easier. In fact, if you even take one of those loans off, it would have been significantly easier. Right? I hope that answered the question. Right? So that is the one issue that he spoke to with respect to shutting down the refinery. That is crude. The second issue was with respect to what he called, and a lot of people refer to it. They say that the portion of funds or the percentage of wages, the wage bill, they claim that was high as compared to typical norms within refineries globally. So he claimed that was an issue. But Petrotrin didn't go through any sort of rapid increase in manpower between 2005 and 2018. Manpower costs was not an issue in the refinery up until 2008, 2009. The refinery was still declaring profits. The refinery was still making profit sharing payments. All right. So for them to even imply that the cost of wages was a reason for the closure is again misleading the people. Because at the time, even prior to 2008, 2009, the percentage was the same and the company was still making a profit. Right?
What happened after
So,
2009 then?
come again?
What happened then after 2009?
Well, we all know 2008, 2009, the debt burden placed on the company pushed us into a position of negative financial performance. Everything
so what
stemmed
they
from
say,
that position.
okay, so what you're essentially saying, it's not the salaries that were being paid, although there needed to be some restructuring, definitely. I think that is accepted. But what you're saying is the putting the emphasis on the salaries. Of course, when people hear the salaries that people make in the oil industry, but that is the norm in the oil industry, it's the nature of the industry. But when when you put the focus on that, it gives the impression that you had too much staff, and that was what, and the staff getting these huge salaries, and that's really what caused Petrotrin not to be able to operate profitably. But let me ask you then, let's get back to the reason that I remember. I heard that reason, yes, but the reason I heard when he spoke was that the bullet payments. That's what he said, and he said we had a bullet payment coming up. He said this in November, whenever in 2018. And to my mind, the focus was on this bullet payment that was coming due in 2019 of US 750 million, and another one that was going to be due in 2022. I might get this 750, 850, but in my mind, what I took out of what he said is they simply did not have the means to continue to operate the Petrotrin because of this U.S. payment that was due. And you also said something last week that really surprised me. So what's the 750 million that was due? So talk about the bullet payments now.
Right. So there were two loans that were taken in a sense. One for 750 million, and the 750 million loan was not a bullet payment. Right? We need to clarify the two. So that loan required a payment. So a certain amount of funds had to go towards repayment.
What's a bullet payment then? What's the difference between a payment and a bullet payment then?
So the bullet payment is an arrangement where when the loan becomes due at whatever date, you have to pay back the full balance on that date. It's a one-shot payment. So the 850 million US loan that we took required a bullet payment to close. And that bullet payment would have been due in August 2019.
Right.
Whereas the 750 million US loan that we took had to be financed every year. And upon the closure of the company, the balance remaining would have been $218,750,000 US.
Okay. You see, that's an
So
important distinction you just made. So there were two
very
payments.
important.
Bullet, you had to pay everything up at one time, everything at the same time. You couldn't pay it in stages. And the other one, which was due in 2022, was a payment that you were financing since 2009, which
That's correct.
created the problems, the financial problems that the Petrotrin started to experience. And it wasn't so much driven as you were made to believe, or at least certainly a part of it was that it was overstaffed, you were getting your salaries were too high. And the other thing that was said, I don't think he said it at that time, but how do you get around the bullet payment? That's the point. I mean, let me be
That's
asking,
a good
because
point.
how do you get around that? I mean, no, I'm asking that because then, I mean, what is the government to do then? If it has a bullet
Right.
payment due and it doesn't
So
have control over price, doesn't have control over price of, and we talk about crude oil, we're not talking about the natural gas and all of that. We're dealing with the crude oil point. Because 2008, 2009 was when they had the global financial crisis and everything collapsed. I remember oil,
yeah,
I was Minister of Finance then. And in January, I had gone to the autumn meeting of the World Bank, and Strauss-Kahn was the head of the IMF, and he would have a meeting with the Caribbean countries. They had an expression for us. Anyway, and I remember asking after the meeting on his own by himself. At that time oil was trading over $100, and that's in September. Because I remember the meetings were around then. So I said, "What is your prediction going forward?" He said, "Oh, it's going to continue at that rate." By January, we're down to $35, and we had to go back to the Parliament with a new mid-year, not a mid-year review, a new review of the budget based on the fact that oil prices had literally collapsed. So you had a double whammy. One of which you had no control, actually both of them, over which.
yeah,
So what is the government's answer? Because the decision, let's be fair now, because I like to be trying to pull myself away from the situation. So if I just look at the bullet payment point, so now I understand the two payments, and I understand that you were financing the second one all along, and that was putting pressure on you to be able to import the crude oil at least 160,000 barrels to make it viable for the refining, so you could sell the fuel to make the foreign exchange and keep the ball rolling. Right? So I understand that. But you'd said the 2019 payment was in fact a bullet payment, which is a one-off payment. So if
yes,
there's one-off payment due in 2019 and it has arisen because of a decision that would have been made by a prior administration,
yes.
I am trying to look at it from that point of view, from a
How
prior
would you get an outcome?
administration. How do you get out of it? Do you think then?
Yeah.
I'm trying to see the position that a government may say, well, we have this payment, how are we going to finance it when, now we're back now in 2018, of course. And from what I read, let me just say this. Well, I'll deal with this point later, the revenue and profit point. So what do you say to that? I mean, what do you say to that as a government?
It's difficult, but you see, the solution was put towards the government before the company closed in 2017. The then CFO would have made it abundantly clear that the only way forward to deal with the bullet payment would have been to refinance it, right? Because we were already under significant strain with the loan burden that we would already had in place. And the decision was taken by the then CFO, I believe Huff is his name, Mr. Huff, Ronald Huff, and he would have made a request to have the loan refinanced, right? Now, that would have put us in a position where we would have continued the payments probably well into 2020, 2030, right? To clear off the 850 bullet payment, similar to what we were doing for the 750. But it would have meant that the refinery would have been able to continue meeting its obligations. So one of the strong points to address this is that even with the financial burden placed on the company in 2018, the company declared a profit of $1.6 billion. Right? And to think that...
Like, I have to say that over again, because if you could say something like that, something, I mean, people hearing you saying that, they're telling themselves how that making sense. So I just, and this is what I really want you to answer, because that's the whole thing. You don't close on something that's making, that is, well, one, a source of revenue. And I think you need to, and I know I broke it up last week, but I want to really, and I guess I look at it so much from a budgetary point of view, and a government's budgetary point of view, because Petrotrin is owned by the state anyhow. And we depend on the energy sector for most of the revenues that the government collects. Revenues, the taxes that they get from the operations of the various energy sectors in our country. So how can you, the difficulty I'm having, so I want you to answer the 2018 part 2, and what the Sherman Lashley report said about that same thing, the revenue point that I'm making. How could you close down? This is what I do understand. No, I'm serious.
You're asking the same question over and over again.
Huh?
You're asking the same question over and over again. I honestly can't even
how
answer
could you
that.
close down a company when you are the government, and the government only runs as minister based on revenue, taxes mostly, investments also, but basically various taxes, and mainly the taxes that they collect from the energy sector. How could you close down a company that is significantly contributing, and clarified for me for sure, were meeting their revenue obligations? Say what the revenue obligations were, even if they were not making a profit at the time. And eventually, in fact, in 2018, you can explain to the public, did you start turning a profit? When did the profit? So there's the revenue and the profit. So I want you, if you could just separate the two, and I'm separating it because I'm looking at it as a government minister looking for revenue to finance expenditure. And then you're looking at it to make money and a profit to pay dividends to the shareholders, which is the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So could you just explain how it is that you are missing the revenue obligations? I can't understand it.
Well, I mean, I would have also said as well, between the years 2014 to 2017, the company would have made a loss. There's no disputing that. That is a fact. Right? In 2018, they quoted a very unrealistic figure there that is intent to mislead. So I won't focus too much on that. But before taxes, the profits made in 2018 was 1.6 billion. That has been reported across the media. So in terms of revenue generation, there really was a challenge in the company between 2014 to 2017. And that is why at the time, the union would have sat down with the company to focus on restructuring the organization based on the recommendations of the Solomon and Associates report, the Lashley report, and the McKinsey report. Right? Those three institutions would have analyzed the refinery through and through. The Lashley was a group that was commissioned by the cabinet. And the output of that, none of those reports spoke to shutting it down. They all acknowledged the potential of the refinery, and they gave recommendations to improve the overall position financially. So in 2018, they started implementing, that would have been under Chairman Espinay, right? They started implementing recommendations, and there was no reduction in the permanent workforce. There was significant uptime on the plants. There was no... We were very, very strong in terms of policing contracts and issues there where we believe there would have been strong wastage of money. And at the end of the day, in that last period of time, the refinery turned a profit, right? So With all that being considered, it goes to show that the business model was profitable, right? What it needed, what Petrotrin lacked, was a proper was a was a proper management arrangement, as well as they needed a level of restructuring, which both the union and the company agreed to. But for some reason in August, a decision was taken to shut it down. Now, when we were invited, both myself and Comrade Dobson would have been present in that meeting. When we were invited to the meeting where they were quote unquote supposed to explain to us the reason why they were going to shut it down, you are talking about Petrotrin. You are talking about a company that is considered the heart of South Trinidad. In fact, one of the lifebloods of Trinidad and Tobago. They did a presentation on 3 slides to justify the shutdown. The 3 slides consisted of options, basically options that they claimed that they would have looked at. And the 3 options, one would have been to leave it as is, 2 would have been to restructure to extend by sending some workers home, and then 3 would have been to shut it down. And they came to a conclusion that 1 and 2 was not viable, so they had to go with 3. And this is where the problem lies. I don't know who would have advised them. We have sent numerous FOIAs to try to get to the bottom of who would have made the final decision to shut it down, in terms of trying to get a copy of the cabinet minutes that would have spoken to it. They have denied us every opportunity to get those. We have to go through lawyers and attorneys to try to get this information from a state, and we're supposed to be accountable to the people. They claim to be accountable to the people, right? But to this day, you cannot tell me that for such a big decision to shut down the heart of South, the lifeblood of Trinidad and Tobago, was made by a small group of persons and justified by 3 slides, right? A decision like that should have probably the most consultation among experts within Trinidad and Tobago before it is made, solely based on the level of impact that a decision of that level will take. And to this day, it is costing this country. It cost this country over $2 billion to pay workers a yearly basis with respect to foreign exchange. You have closures of contracting companies. You have the social impact on families and businesses and contractors and all these support services. And now we see a company that has been restructured. And what they do is that they hire these companies like Kenson and Trinity to work these contract arrangements inside of their labor supply contracts, where they are completely taking advantage of the workforce there, forcing some persons to work unreasonable hours, sometimes in excess of 16 hours a day, right? Imagine that. You have situations where people would be working
Frozen.
Yeah, he's frozen up a little bit here.
Let's hope he hadn't.
I tell you, the information that is coming out here is surely baffling as to the
It
reasons
is what
why.
it is.
Yeah, as to the reason why they claim they wanted to close it down. You know, I got the gist of your question. I mean, it's difficult for me to understand that profiting 1 point something billion dollars and having a bullet payment of 800 and something million US. I can't understand why we couldn't just clear that up and continue with the
Yeah, but what about the revenue you're getting from it? Because they met all their revenue in levies, royalties, special petroleum taxes, income tax. You were meeting those obligations.
Yeah.
And well, hopefully he comes back soon. But the Salvin last report of June 2017 said between 2007 2017, the company provided government with $43 billion in levies, royalties, SPTs, and income tax. No dividends were paid between 2011 and 2015. So, you're back, Mr.
Yes.
Jackman?
So Jackman, are you back with us? Yeah?
Yeah, we
Yes,
lost
Dobson is here
you.
as well too.
Yeah,
It
we
seems
have
Yes,
a
as though we have bad
froze.
internet down on the side.
Yeah,
yeah. Okay,
you froze up on us.
nice.
So you were explaining to
Yeah,
us the three slides: close,
yes,
restructure, or leave it as it is. Right. So
correct.
and you said if you have information, you haven't gotten any responses back for the minutes and who would have been made a final decision. Let me ask you something before I ask you this. As you mentioned, the Freedom of Information Act, I read today, coincidentally, and I'm sure you probably knew about it before I did. I only was reading in the papers where this gentleman who works with WASA had asked under the Freedom of Information Act for certain information regarding the investigation into, anyway, a disciplinary matter. Let's put it that way. And one of the newspapers was far more forthcoming in giving names and information than the other. I mean, they call the names of the persons involved, and all roads led back, to the involving the minister from what the newspaper reported. But the issue was, though, the question, what happened in that matter is that the judge in that case determined under Section 35 of the Act, which I haven't read, but obviously weighing private interest, right to privacy, against the public interest, right to be known, right to know. So are you thinking then of now challenge, since they are not responding and not providing the information on the FYA, are you thinking of going that route? Because it is it's WASA state owned. And certainly if WASA is a matter of public interest, and Petrotrin is even more a matter of public interest, just on the face of it. So are you considering going that route of challenging the failure of the state to provide, I don't know if I'm asking out of turn if you're not supposed to answer,
No,
you're
no, no.
considering.
We will answer.
Afternoon again, Anthony Dobson here.
Oh, yes, Mr. Dobson.
I will take that question. When I would have submitted the FYI request to the Petrotrin board, they would have denied me the information, the disclosure, and that information would have been, we would have appealed that decision, and on December the 3rd of 2024, we will have a judicial review hearing.
Okay.
We
Well,
are,
we know
we
how
are
the reviews are going these days.
well, we are waiting to see what will happen, but it's for judicial. It's coming up for judicial hearing on the 3rd of December, 2020.
And who's the minister? The Minister of Energy. You make a review of the decision of whom? Of the board of Petrotrin,
led by
and the Minister of Energy, or just the board of Petrotrin.
That's
Not
the
the minister himself, but the office of. That's what I meant by that.
Yeah, but right now, does the board right now? They would have their lawyers representing the board of representing the company.
To get judicial review of the decision, not whether or not you should be allowed for leave. Leave. Are you asking for leave for judicial review? Or are you for leave? Well, just as I'm sure your lawyers have said, and which is always even with this matter, I'm not going off on another tangent, but just as when I was looking at the matter with the Auditor General, I mean, I go on another show, and I was saying, I did reference in terms of reference, and I said, I did say it's on the record, so I'm not saying it after the fact. I did say it long before. I said these terms of reference. Why is the minister not in these terms of reference? I said if they want to find out the truth, why do I mean, and the point of that at the end of the day is the Privy Council. Let them argue with the Privy Council. Let them argue, because matter of fact, the Court of Appeal decision was upheld by the Privy Council. Right. The only difference was the Privy Council has not given a written judgment yet, but what was telling is, why wasn't the minister there? But the key with a judicial review, which is why judicial review is a very powerful tool. Now, I don't know what will be the outcome at the end, even after you get leave and you get the opportunity to have the matter heard before court. But the threshold is a very low threshold for leave, because the general attitude of the court, we do not want to shut you out of the court, out of judgment. We want to give you every opportunity to have your matter ventilated. So the threshold, and it's decided in the Sharma case and the Marseilles Césaire case, which is going to be heard in against the Judicial Legal Service Commission brought it against her. But in both cases, we're not dealing with the substantive issue. The issue of judicial review the threshold is a very low threshold, but this is what the test they apply. Is there reasonable, or is it realistic? That is the word. That is a realistic possibility of success. That is the test they use to determine whether to grant leave or not. Is there a realistic possibility that if we give you leave to review a decision, which would be of the board, and have it heard, I guess, before a court, is there a realistic possibility of success? That's the test. It is outlined in the case law, outlined in the Judicial Review Act. So you are saying to me, with the Freedom of Information Act right now, you have gone a step further to ask for leave for judicial review of the decision of the board not to release those documents. That will help a lot. That will help a lot.
We shouldn't even have to go that far. To me, if the government, if the powers that be were confident that they made the right decision, there's no need to hide. There's no need to hide the information. Share it. Why force persons to go through this level of scrutiny just for us to find out who would have made the decision? We already know the decision.
Is that what you're asking for? What are the documents you'd be asking for,
Yes.
Mr. Dobson? What are you asking for?
A copy of the Board of Directors notes or minutes to exit the refining business 2018. Also, I would have also requested actually cabinet, and the cabinet will, regarding a cabinet decision to exit the refining business, they also would have replied in the same that it is non-disclosure, but that one have been challenged. The one that has been challenged is the one with the board of directors for judicial leave.
Right.
What is being challenged? Not the cabinet.
Not the cabinet.
Yeah.
The one is currently before the courts is the one with the board of Petrotrin.
Yeah, we need to explain that.
Explain that.
It was two FOIs, one sent to the cabinet, one sent to the board. The one sent to the cabinet, they responded by stating that the document is an exempt document, one, and imagine that they referred us to an article in the newspapers written by Stuart Young.
Himself to himself.
stating that this is the reason why. They're completely missing the point that what we are trying to get to the bottom of is to identify who would have made the decision, not why we think it was the right decision.
No, they understood what you meant. Stuart Young is a lawyer too.
Yeah.
And in a very good chambers, by the way.
Yeah, correct is right. You don't want to tell me
Don't
that.
underestimate him as an attorney. So that I know he may not have been the AG, and then of course we have an attorney general who's more than competent. So I can't prejudge that issue with that, but I do know that with the matter that went with the Auditor General at the lower court, the High Court, was one of the reasons where the Court of Appeal overturned that decision, as did the Privy Council uphold the Court of Appeal's decision. The argument that I think the High Court judge made was that you couldn't answer, that didn't apply to cabinet. If I remember, that is something, an argument about you couldn't apply to the cabinet. So if that is argument doesn't hold water, that also means that the two FOIs, well, I'm just saying that based on my knowledge of what has transpired since when persons have challenged those decisions of the FOIA for release of information from state or public authorities or public persons, because that's what it applies to, they have generally been successful. But coming back to something that you said, I see in the Selman Lashley report, they said between 2007 and 2017, the company provided the government with $43 billion in levies, royalties, SPTs, special petroleum tax, and income tax, and petroleum tax. So, I mean, and then you said in quarter 3, I think, of 2018, according to the SPNA report, you started turning around significant profit because you had put into operation many of the recommendations of the experts or the consultants that had been hired. And so while quarter one wasn't good, quarter three started showing the positive results of that. Is that, am I correct in saying that?
Yes,
So
but there was a conscious effort to better manage the finances of the organization, and it bared fruit, right? So I don't know if you would allow me, but I need
go
to
ahead,
make
no,
sure,
you have the floor.
yeah, I need to make sure we get this point across, because it really bothered me when I saw it. Last week we were speaking about foreign exchange, right? And there was reference to a video that that the finance minister would have started, where he spoke to the refinery generating, being a positive earner of foreign exchange, right? Now I see here he would have posted on his X account. I believe this is X. All right. He put this statement saying that the opposition UNC is circulating a fake video to pretend that in a recent press conference I said that Petrotrin was not a drain on the country. The video footage is 5 years old and the audio is doctored, he said. Of course, I said no such thing even 5 years ago, typical of the UNC, right? So he is saying that on this video that the audio is doctored. Now, this video was released in 2019, where he would have made the statement. And in the very same video, the reporters present in the video would have asked him about the 20 million, 25 million that has to be constantly put into Paria. So I cannot understand how he is saying that that is a altered video, right? And to add to that, we understand how we came up with the $20 million that Paria needs every year, every month. And 20 million,
20 million PT or US?
US dollars. 20 million US dollars. And if you look back at the figures, back in 2018, yes, we could agree to the fact that for 2018, 2019, $20 million would have been required. But what the country doesn't know is that if you use the same methodology, where you take the amount of US dollars given to Paria for the year and you divide that by the numbers of months, 12. If you check back from 2019 to present, the amount of US spent to Paria, these are what the figures look like. 2019, 2020, that fiscal year, $31 million a month. 2020 to 2021, $38 million a month. All these figures are US here. 2021 to 2022, $84 million a month. 2022 to 2023, $70 million a month, right? And 2023 to 2024, we only have 9 months here because for some reason now giving us FOI information now is a problem. So when we apply for the last 3 months, they're sending the responses to attorneys and telling us, well, yeah, what we finding this reason and that reason why you can't get it. Because they now realize what we're doing with the information, right? So for the 9 months that we have, on average, we're looking at 70 million US dollars for the month. So this figure has escalated tremendously.
Now, let me stop you right there because I know you understand what the point you're making. But let me just backtrack you a little bit so we make sure that the listening audience who have made comments here, and some of them have said that have you all gotten any response on the Ministry of Energy at any time for a lot of the truths that have been exposed? That is one of the persons. But what you are saying is what I want clarification on. What is Paria? What part Paria played in Point-to-Pay Refinery and in relation to foreign exchange? Because what you are saying, if I understand you, and I think public needs to understand what you're saying, is that Paria fuel trading, who is Paria fuel trading? And that money you're talking about, that foreign exchange, who is paying that? And before the refinery was closed down and you had the marketing side when you're producing fuel from the refinery, where was the foreign exchange coming from?
Right. Good. So Paria is the fuel import and export subsidiary of Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited. So they are the arm of the company that purchases your gasoline, your diesel, and they will sell that regionally up the islands, as well as they will supply that to the local market. All right. So you would appreciate Paria is not really a foreign exchange, a net positive foreign exchange earner. Right? They need US dollars so that they can buy products, and then they will take those products that they buy and they will sell some of the islands, and they will give the remaining to Trinidad and Tobago for use on the local market.
What percentage? What kind of percentage you're looking at? So how much will they send outside? How much of that? So they're buying the fuel and they're paying US dollars for it, and you read out the kind of cost they're looking at. So out of that, how much of that fuel that they would import and using up foreign exchange in order to do that, to what extent would they have made any return on the US dollars that the government was now supplying them with? And what was the position before the closure of the refinery in relation to the fuel?
Right. So before the closure, remember, Petrotrin as an entity was a positive foreign exchange earner. So we would spend forex on crude, but when you sell your products, you're selling products at a higher price, so you earn net positive. Now, yes, we would also sell to the regional market as well, and that would be a loss of US. But when you check the overall, it was still a net positive. And that is the point that would have also been confirmed by Imber in the infamous now false video, right? In terms of the
so
percentage.
What you're saying is that you were earners of foreign exchange. You were earners of foreign exchange because a refinery refines crude oil to make different products, which I would like you to tell us more about, because I think last week David said that, you didn't even, it's not just, if you just give an idea of the kinds of products and the extent to which the closure of that refinery had in the production of those products. But so what you were doing, you were not getting foreign exchange, you were not using up the foreign exchange. Foreign exchange that we had gone from 10 point something to 5 point something, to which a lot of it has bond payment, which is really debt payments, a lot of debt attached to that foreign exchange, right? Yes. So you were not getting money from the government, so you were not using up the limited foreign exchange. Not yours. Some others are using it up, but not you. It was certainly not Petrotrin. In fact, Petrotrin, if it was anything, was earning foreign exchange, was not taking was not utilized or consuming the limited foreign exchange. If anything, it was earning foreign exchange and certainly was paying its own way when it came to earning foreign exchange. Is that the point?
Yes. Now you also asked another question in terms of the proportions, right? Right. So I wanted to give you an example in terms of the expenditure, because if you look at the expenditure between the two, you can have an idea as to how much would have gone regional and how much would have gone local, right? So for the 2023 to 2024 period, the regional sales took up $655 million, 655 million. The local took up 4.748 billion TT dollars.
Wow.
Right? No, that's TT, yeah?
Okay.
So we need to divide that figure by 6.5. So that would work up to around the same in terms of proportion. Let's say 50-50. Right? So out of all the US dollars that you expend, which would have been a total of 1.291 billion US dollars for that 9-month period, half of that goes to regional sales, where you can make a small profit on your US dollars, and the remaining half is lost on the local market. So we are losing around 636 million US dollars, and that is in 9 months. Right? That is the amount. So if you take that and you divide that,
you mean the country?
the country. The country is
Yeah, we have to agree with
extending.
the country is doing that. And that
Correct.
was an expense that would not have arisen and had not arisen when
Under
petrol
refinery.
under refine, because the purpose of refining is to refine crude oil to create a set of products, some for the local consumption and some for export. And that what you exported, you earn foreign exchange from. So you were earning your own foreign exchange. You certainly were not consuming the limited foreign exchange. So the position with our foreign exchange position today is a partly to a large extent based on the figures we had looked at last week, as large part of the consumption of our foreign exchange has come as a result of having to pay the suppliers of the products that Petrotrin would have produced, for refined products that Petrotrin would have produced when the refinery was open.
Correct.
So that is what has happened, and I don't have the figure, but it was astounding actually, because it was in the newspapers. Just I have it here. It said that in July 2024, you'll have it there. Paria, 430 million in 3 months in import value. So you had regionally, the value for sale was 263.8 million. But in any case, the point that you had made, I have another figure here. The government spent over 3 billion US on fuel imports between 2019 and 2022. So that is the money that we are spending on the limited foreign exchange, because it has gone to, it is a drastic, really drastic position where you go from 10.4 billion in September 2015 to, in May of this year, to 5.6 billion. And by the way, it became 5.6 billion because I think the central bank injected about 500 million so that it wouldn't look as bad as it probably was, in order to avoid borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. Took money out of the HSF to the value of 8.2 billion TT dollars. That is what they have been reduced to doing, and somehow they don't understand. So the foreign exchange issue here, apart from everything else, the foreign exchange issue, which is the major issue that Trinidad and Tobago is facing, because there's limited foreign exchange, a lot has to do with the fact that significant foreign exchange is being used to prop up Paria to pay for the import of fuel. That even though part of it is exported to the regional market, it certainly is, and I guess if they pay the US dollars, it certainly is not the same thing as saying you're not consuming US dollars. In fact, if it's anything, you are earning US dollars from, you were earning US dollars.
And I'm seeing a question in the comments there. If it was such a great business, why no one interested in buying it? I think he's a bit misinformed there, because we've had 3 bidding processes so far. Well, we've had 3 processes so far, and I believe the first process we had 66 potential people applying for. That was narrowed down from 66 to 10, right? So it's an incorrect statement to say people aren't interested in buying it. Even the current tender process, the non-binding bidding process, would have had 10 persons submitting interest. In fact, we would have all been aware of the person who would have met in the diplomatic center with the Prime Minister having discussions regarding the very same refinery as well. So that's a very incorrect statement, and he needs to correct it.
Well, it's not, it may be incorrect, but it's not unfair. It's not an unfair statement. Sometimes when you're too close to the trees, you can't see the forest. And you have to understand, everybody's in the forest. You may be in the trees, but the rest of the country is in the forest. So we're giving you a chance through this medium to let people understand, which is a reasonable question. If it's so you have answered that. But one of the things I want to ask you in relation to that, and I have to ask you that, is Patriotic was among the 10, and then you're not in it. You're not in the last 3. I think they named the 3. You're not Patriotic, which had bid, and not in the last 3. But in the newspapers of October the 5th, I don't think the minister minced his words. this, and I would like you to give you an opportunity to explain to the public what that was about. That $1.5 billion, he's saying that was submitted to the
People.
banks, to the banks, they said, as a bid for the refinery, and that they said that that document was fraudulent, it was false, etc., etc. So, how do you respond to the allegation that the Petrotrin did not have the 1.5 billion? I mean, Patriotics did not have the 1.5 billion, and what had sent to the bank was a fraudulent. That's the words he used, I believe. And I think I'm not being false and fraudulent with the words I think he used, and that it was in order to secure, in order to bid for the purchase of the refinery. How do you respond to that? I'm giving you a chance to explain it to all of us. What, from your point of view, what was the position?
I embrace these questions. I embrace them. So,
the
Minister of Energy, took it upon himself to stand up in Parliament and wave a piece of paper and give the country the impression that the reason why Patriotic was not considered was because we submitted false documents, right? That was the impression he tried to sell, and he did it magnificently. He's a very good performer. What we would have responded by asking him is to state categorically that if this paper that you're waving, if this is the reason why Patriotic was not considered. He refused to say that. And the reason why he would not make such a statement is because that document did not form part of Patriotic's final bid proposal. All right?
So what was that document then? So what was that document about then? I have to ask you a hard question. Huh?
No, that's not a hard question. It's an easy question. The document was submitted. It was submitted in error. I don't know how it came into that mix, right? And I'm not going to dwell on that. But what I can say is that the document was rescinded well before the time for final submission, because we also acknowledge that there was an issue with that document, with that financier who would have been working with us at that time, right? So we eliminated them and we submitted one of our alternatives. They would have gone through the scrutiny process, and they were very well vetted and accepted by Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited. So Mr. Young getting up in Parliament and waving this document is misleading the population. And again, his motivations for doing that, he said clearly in Parliament, because PG and Roji would have got up and made a statement that the refinery is now the country's biggest political football. That was his reason for singling out Patriotic for that attack. But we responded to that. We responded to that quite clear as far as I'm concerned. And I challenged the Minister of Energy to tell us if that was the reason why Patriotic was not considered.
Okay, so I am being the sort of want to be very clear as to my understanding of what you just said. What you have just said is that document, which was waved around and certainly gave the public the impression that Patriotics, in its effort to secure a bid and to get the refinery, submitted a document that said that they had a financier, and that the financier, getting financing from this particular financier in the tune of $1.5 billion. What you, right?
What you 1.5 billion.
1.5 billion US, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so what you are saying is, let's say, however it got in, you are saying it was rescinded and taken out before the bidding documents were submitted. When was it taken out? Because what you're saying is you were able to secure a financier who met all the requirements of TTPHL regarding financing, and that was the document that was submitted with the bid for the refinery. And that other document, which he's speaking of, did it form any part of the formal application? It was never part of it.
Nope.
It's
As
a
part
red
of our
herring.
final accepted bid, yes.
Huh?
As part of our final bid, what I would like to say too is that I saw when he waved that paper in Parliament. Again, I believe it was TPHL themselves put out a statement stating that that they'll be looking into it and investigating. What came out of that? What
But
came out of that?
well, you know what came out of it? Politics. Good
That is,
politics.
yeah.
And you see, that's why that is good politics came out of it. And that's what they play in politics. You have to be able to play that you have to be able to play that political game. So
And that's
if
why
it
we
is,
do what we do now. We play in the
yeah, but
politics.
we'll have to better. Yeah, I don't want you to take offense to what I'm saying because I'm
Not taking offense.
talking to a politician, right? Also, I mean, I'm not wearing that hat here, but I can't separate it entirely. If I were in your position, you know, I don't think the public. I mean, maybe you have made it clear, but maybe the media, or maybe I don't know. I certainly would not have. I think the impact of what the minister did was so powerful that it necessitated a very strong response to that. That it was very clear that as part of the package for the bidding for the refinery, that the financier that was put forward as part of that package was approved by TTPHL, and that document that the minister waved around did not form part of the package, was not submitted as part of, am I right to say that? Was not submitted as part of the package. So where is that, where did that document come out from then?
Well,
I have to ask you that question.
someone, Stuart Young, would have claimed he got it in his mailbox. So it would have been, it
Oh,
would have
what's the
meant that
mailbox?
somebody, another mailbox situation. So somebody who would have been part of that committee, or it could have well been somebody within our organization as well too. So, you never know where the worms lie. But somebody would have fed that information to him in an attempt to sully our name.
But you all have not responded sufficiently that don't take it harder. But I am going to tell you that.
You have to be aware. You have to be aware that there's an uphill challenge that we face with respect to the media. So we have taken a conscious decision now to do more of these interviews for this very same reason. Because the major entities, the Express, the CNC trees, it's very difficult to get your perspective forward when you're competing with the state. All right. And it means that we have to adapt our strategies a bit and try to focus on these smaller podcasts to get the words out. And it works. Because of this situation, the country is now aware of the forex challenges that we're facing, right? And it would have pushed them to the point where they would have had this SRC statement put out as a diversion to throw people off the forex situation, because the forex situation was becoming more and more hot, right? Yeah, so it means that we are having an impact, and we will continue to come out and speak the truth, because what we realize is this response that he put out here about fake video. It shows me that they are not willing to.
Why don't you put something like fake video, fake 1.5, fake email lead? Why don't you put something out there that you have, if you play in politics, which is what is being played out there, you have to understand, I mean, sorry, I don't mean to think, but if that's what's going on here, if you are trying to win the war of the public to believe it, to get credibility. So the fake video, is that a fake video or not a fake video? Is that a fake email gate or not a fake email gate? Is it a fake 1.5 or is it a fake email? You decide what it is. But let me show you what was said by the minister. And then I'd put that out. Let me show you what came out of the email gate. Nothing came out of that. It looked like it was that whatever post box it came out of, something was wrong with that post office, right? And the third thing you have to ask is that, no, but I'm serious. And the third thing is, I'm not picking up for you, I'm just trying to be fair to you. And then the third thing I'll say, that 1.5 document, right? Is that another case of email gate? Is that another case of, this is what you have to fight back with, because what they have done very effectively is to get at your credibility, right? And using what you do not have, the parliament, which is the parliament channel, and which is being viewed, and waving a paper. Well, they're not
Media.
waving because the opposition waved paper for them too. And he did that against CPNM itself. I mean, that was really part of the problem Mr. Manning faced himself, right? With the church. I mean, let us be honest, so let's be honest. So you cannot underestimate the power of waving a piece of paper. So you cannot respond by having this nice gentlemanly conversation with me. That's nice. It's all good and proper to have a nice gentleman. But he didn't have a nice gentlemanly conversation with Parliament, did he? You can't respond like that. Because if you respond like that, you will never, ever convince anybody. You have to think, the minister said he didn't say that, then put what he said. Fake or true. Email gate. The prime minister said this, fake or false. Then the third one would be, the minister said that we put in this document, fake or false. Then you show the bundle that you sent in, and show if you have something from TPHL which said that they accepted your bid, then put up that. That's what you have to do. You have to fight them back with the same level of, you have to be political about that. And the political response, that is a political response, in my respectful opinion. Of course, I'm only saying it because I wanted the answer to that question. And I do not think, in all fairness to you all, that you have politically, and that's what you're playing. Yes, it's a political football. They understand that. Everybody understand there's politics going on right now and elections coming up. You can't let that, and it's the credibility of OWTU. I mean, your name has been stained a lot by that, and you need a fight back. Anyway, I'll show you how we advisor. So let me leave that alone.
But give me a better time to respond to that, because it is very important, and I agree with you that that the response required a certain measure of vigor coming out. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to the response from the President General immediately after that release in Parliament. More than likely, you probably would not have heard that, right? But he would have responded to that in what I would term probably the most appropriate way. Again, I want to emphasize that.
What did he say?
A lot of persons, exact same thing that we would have said there. Exact same response, right? But of course, it was with a lot more fire. I'm a bit more diplomatic than my PG, right? My PG spits fire. Right?
No, he's so passionate in his expression.
Yeah. Yes, correct is right. Now, what I have to say though is that and it's a lesson that we learned, because we've been fighting this battle since the closure of the company in 2018. And what I've learned is that it's very difficult to go toe-to-toe with the government, the state's media power. Right? They have a level of influence and strength within the mainstream that is difficult for us to compete with. So what we have to do realistically is work around and work on the ground. So what works very, very well is by getting them and exposing them, putting their foot in their mouth. So you see, when they speak, expose the untruths to what they say and circulate and spread that, and that works exceedingly well. And that is what we have chosen as our primary weapon of attack going forward to this election. So there are many things. This Petrotrin one is our main bread and butter. This is the one that is very much most important to us. But trust me, there are many other issues where they continue to put their foot in their mouth that we will be putting some effort in as we come closer to this election. It's going to be a wild ride.
Okay, but I want to just say, okay, go ahead, Mr. Dawson.
If I may add, I would have submitted 7 questions on October the 7th, 2024, this year, to TPHL regarding the contemplated sale of the refinery. Only about 2 weeks ago, I would have received replies for all 7, and all 7 came back the same. This information is exempt and it cannot be disclosed by TPHL, a state entity. So this is what we face. Imagine a public entity is going to be up for sale right now, contemplated sale, whether it's a lease or a sale arrangement. But when we ask this question to the FYA, TPHL, who is the holding company of the refinery, of Karakara refinery asset, this is their replies. So as a citizen, we are asking questions. We are trying to find out what is taking place with this evaluation process. They said they appointed a government appointed, cabinet appointed evaluation team. All these correspondences, we would have submitted them to the FYA, and they would have replied that they cannot disclose that. So where here the national public is right now is in the dark of what is taking place with this whole contemplated sale or lease of our refinery.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm gonna go back a little track back again because, and again,
Sure.
I like that answer. Good thing, and um, when you're in the business that you're in, of course, you just don't give up, because if
Nope.
you do give up, that's where your whole, in my view, generally your democracy is at risk. So I might make a reference to the Auditor General. People said, why, how come, what was the thing about her? And I do not know her, never met her, never spoke to her, never set eyes on her. She doesn't know me. We do not know each other at all. So I have no thing to support her at all.
All
But
right.
what I will say is that I don't think they ever expected her to fight them the way she fought them.
She did.
I think they thought she'd go in a corner, shut her mouth, like so many other public officers, because they're afraid for whatever, losing their job and so on. And it's going to be very difficult for them, in my view, to use that Harris investigation after the report. I suspect, I don't cast 100%, when the Privy Council gives it, based on a line of reasoning, a line of questioning, from the Privy Council, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to not look as though they were there looking to remove her. And the first step in trying to remove her, since they couldn't remove her under 116.6 because she's insulated, is to set up a investigation, which would then recommend to setting up of a tribunal. Who would be the one to do that? Would be the president under, I think, 126 or 127 of the Constitution, either on her own. Who appoints the president? The prime minister or the prime minister. That's why you have to have independent prime. You want to know why you have to have independent president? That's a good example. So to me, I cannot say 100%. I cannot say 100%, but it looked like you're going around a circuitous way to, you can't get her under 116.6, set up this investigation, because the complaint in the WASA issue is that the gentleman is saying that he was being pressured by the investigative committee to come to a particular result. And he wants the minutes and everything to be released. That's what he was saying. So like, it's almost the investigative committee was set up to get a particular result. So, you get so, this government makes you have so little trust and confidence by their own behavior that it's not unreasonable for someone to think that they set up that investigative committee to be able now to set up a tribunal under which, if you read the section 126 or 127, 11 says it applies to the Auditor General, specifically says it applies to her or him, and that the grounds for would be disability of mind or physical disability, misbehavior, or any other cause. This is what they are doing. This is why in your issue with the FOIA, I am not fighting anybody. I fighting for my country, and I'm not fighting for the OWTU. My father was against. My father used to fight you all.
We hope you take a different stance.
He was the president of the ECA. He was the man sitting down there. They didn't take him, right? You understand? Yeah. My father was the commissioner of labor and all of that. So I'm not fighting. I'm not against the unions, believe you me. But what I'm trying to say, I am for justice. I'm there for justice. And I don't know if in your FOIA, why don't you get a document from TTPHL saying that you made the bid requirements for the in terms of the 1.5 billion, that you met that bid requirement? Why don't you get an ask for that, release that document? Because if you get a release of that document, then it will bring to the public. But then, what was that other document about? What was that other document about? If TTPHL, if there's such a document, had no difficulty with your financier, what other difficulty they may have had? The financier was not a difficulty. So what was that document about? Anyway, for my advice on that before I get, I want to ask you, and David asked that I should ask you this before what are the products? Everybody think, what are the products that the refinery produced? Because he said it's a much wider range than we know, and the impact of not having those products available. If you could give us an idea of the products that the refinery, that now that Paria has to import, or whoever else has to import, that you would otherwise have produced.
No problem at all. So with respect to the standard ones, we know the products that are available across the market. So your gasoline, your kerosene, your diesel, your jet, right? Those are the standards. Apart from that, we produce bitumen. Bitumen is a very highly viscous oil tar-like material that is used in terms of preparation and installation of roadways. All right, so that is very, very much important. We produced a low-octane fuel called regular gasoline. All right, that is not something you'll use in your average cars. That would have been more for small engines. For example, you will have your fishermen. The fishermen were highly reliant on that. All right, the refinery produced sulfuric acid. Right, that acid used to sell for extremely high prices. We produced a product called alkylate. We had a plant that produced alkylate. Now, alkylate was also used in the refinery itself to improve the octane of our gasoline. All right, so it could also be sold, and again, it could be sold for US currency and very, very high prices as well. Then on top of that, we produce sulfur, right? Yellow sulfur pearls. I don't know if you're familiar with sulfur powder that they will use for little cuts on your skin. That could have also been exported again to produce fireworks, matches, these kind of things. Now, that is what we would have produced within Point-A-Pier. But as a refinery, we would have also produced fuel oil, bunker fuel. That is fuel that you use for tankers on the sea, right? That now has to be imported to meet our bunkering requirements. And we also have, as a refinery, the capability of
aiding. Tell me a little bit about the bunkering, because I know a company was formed just before the closure of the refinery, RHG, just months before the closure of the refinery, that was getting RHG, formed in June 12, 2028. I wouldn't name the names of the persons, but I just won't name the names. But just a few months after that, they got a license, and they were awarded a bunkering license in Gulf of Paria just months before the closure of the refinery, with a 2-year startup period. And they would only one that could have the license to conduct a ship-to-ship bunkering in the Gulf of Paria. They didn't own any vessels. I don't know if that's necessary to be in that business. And they said they didn't have any experience in the bunkering business. Only one director was in the business for a long time in another company. Just want to be fair. So bunkering was another part of your business. And so how did you also, are you saying that you had many streams of earning foreign exchange? Is that what you're saying, besides what the traditional ones that we know about?
That is correct. In fact, bunkering was a very contentious issue in the refinery within its last 8 years. It was an area of the business that Petrotrin itself failed to capitalize on until the later years. So what we do, as you so rightfully said, bunkering license would have been issued to certain companies. You had to apply for that, and that would have been issued by the state. All right? When whichever company would have received that license, they now had permission to come to Petrotrin and purchase fuel at a reduced price, to purchase that bunker fuel, right? That would allow them now to be able to sell at a reasonable price to make a profit, right?
Oh,
Petrotrin as its own self as an entity was reluctant to get into that bunkering market. As the union, we had to have several meetings with the entities, with the state, with the management of the company, to convince them to explore the market. So what ended up happening, the company ended up leasing a tanker that would have used bunker fuel from the refinery to distribute in our regional waters. And it was only after constant pressing from the union that they decided to go down that road. And that turned out to be a profitable exercise, right? In terms
that's
of
another avenue for earning foreign exchange besides what
correct,
people know about the oil refinery. But let me
correct,
ask. So, from what we could kind of, I'm going to ask you something because we're coming towards the end issue, but it's just really a question that I putting to you if there's any merit in it. But
yeah,
before I go to that, from what I understand from what you're saying is that you were meeting your revenue commitments, your tax commitments. Yes, but you were not. There was a period in time when you were not making profits, but that had a lot to do with the um, price and also this bullet payment, which you said, which the minister said was quoted as saying it could have been um, restructured because that appeared to have been a major consideration,
right,
and also to you were an earner of foreign exchange. You certainly were not a consumer of the foreign exchange that we have. If anything, you earn foreign exchange for the country
correct,
and by various products that you produced. But what we now have is Paria, which is now facing a serious, well, it has to be serious, legal challenge by the families of the deceased in that Paria,
yeah,
both the Paria, the company, as well as the
and the
independent
contractor,
contractor. But
yeah,
the independent contractor, well, if you look at the commission inquiry, he recommended in terms of the opportunity, in terms of trying to save the lives of the persons who were caught in that
pipeline,
in pipeline. His that's just a commission inquiry. So, I mean, that's the conclusion he came to, that it was only Paria alone liable on that part because they prevented, according to the evidence that was given, prevented any efforts to try to save the lives of the divers that were caught in the sea line, and they were actually prevented from doing so. And the other thing too is, of course, well, I know that as a lawyer, and I can't imagine it's any different. Even though you have an independent contractor, you also have a responsibility in hiring independent to make sure it's a competent independent contractor. And
that's correct,
certainly from the evidence that came out, I won't call the name of the gentleman, but he had absolutely no experience in sea line work. He'd never done underwater work. He had 6 months experience in doing soldering or whatever. And so you send someone like that, anyway. So, I mean, Paria now
that one I'm not too
itself,
sure about, huh?
huh?
That one I'm not too sure about. This contractor had a significant amount of experience working at that same location.
No, not
I
the
think,
contractor. The person is sent to the contractor company may have had a lot of experience, but the person that it has in the commission inquiry report, the person that is sent had only worked for the company for 6 months. That's the person they sent, and that he had never done undersea work in soldering. That his work had been done. The person they sent, right? So and therefore, when you are, even though you're independent contractors responsible for his employees, and that's why you have there's also a responsibility then, even then, that you make sure that the person that's there that is what I'm saying, the commission of inquiry, and that
yeah,
the day, what they call something day, when they decide to do the work day, the something day that they use, he was not even present. Anyway, that's what I'm saying is Paria is in trouble. They treated people badly and now they import with them. And now we know
yeah,
the foreign exchange that Paria is using up. They are using up the foreign exchange that the Petrotrin would have been able to produce, apart from a number of other products. Now, what I want to ask you somewhat said, and he keeps saying this to me, and I wouldn't follow up because, there's a bit of math skepticism in me, but they were very strong on it. So I'm asking you this. With the natural gas decision to follow the natural gas, which was very good at the time, because at one point in time, basically, we provided America with 80% of its natural gas needs for its buses and trains and so on. Now, America is a major exporter of natural gas.
That's correct.
And the LNG business, most of the gas that they're going to get from these various gas fields, whether Manatee or Coquina, and that Dragon Field, I don't know why the minister is saying what he's saying. Why does he keep saying that they work? I mean, this is something I have a real problem with, He knows the problem is OFAC. He knows the problem is OFAC. America, for right or wrong, uses sanctions as their method of getting compliance from countries.
Correct.
OFAC gave them a 2-year license that expires October the 31st next year. 2 years to pay in cash for the natural gas that they would have exploited from the Dragon Field. Shell had to make a final investment decision. You telling me the reason they haven't made it is because they're still doing work on doing work to find out whether they should do it. Why are you telling people things like that? You've got the license. The license doesn't matter. Venezuela want license from anybody who will give them US, right?
Of
or
course.
give them the US. And
I was
I'm not
taking every cent of it myself.
Huh?
I was taking every cent of it myself.
Right, and I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that. But the reason is the Office of Fixed Assets Control, which uses sanctions as a method, and that is why also know that Shell applied for a 15-year OFAC license and was denied it, and that is why their Shell shareholders will not. The 2 years nearly coming to end. We are in November. It is less than a year, and they have not made a decision. It's because they cannot get a long OFAC license to pay in cash for their shareholders to be satisfied that that's a good investment. Stop telling people it's because they're still doing work in Dragon Field. Then stop telling people that the reason is OFAC. Now, if Biden didn't want to give you more than 2 years, I don't know what Trump will do. But they're not fighting Trinidad. They're not fighting Trinidad. That's it. And he's not. This is what you see when you have a minister of energy, that when he's telling you about train 1 and he waving a piece of paper according to you, that I have to say, based on what you're saying, was never submitted upon the formal document. And then when you have him keep on talking about Dragon, feel like if it's alive and it's doing this exploratory work, when you very well know it's OFAC. Everybody knows OFAC. It's OFAC is the problem. And Shell is not signing. Why Shell sign Manatee? Shell sign Manatee, the cross-border, the Manatee, because the Manatee gas fees is in Trinidad. They're not fighting. America not fighting Trinidad. America fighting Venezuela. Maximum pressure didn't work. I'm not taking sides. I'm just telling you that is reality. So if Biden couldn't be persuaded to give him more than 2 years, and President Trump has made it clear that he's going to put tariffs on imports, make America great again, and all of that. And he's going to do all of those things that he has promised to do. Whether he does it or not is another thing. But let us just say, if you couldn't get more than 2 years from Biden, you think you'll get more than 2 years from Trump? And the 2 years nearly over, and you keep telling people that they're still working on Dragon Field. Why don't you tell the people the truth? It's not the license, it's OFAC.
Yep. And let's understand the impact that gas shortages will have in Trinidad and Tobago. Eh?
Oh my
Lord. We speak in Atlantic LNG. We speak in the Point Lisas Industrial Estate. We speak in gas supplies through the gas to the NGC gas network throughout Trinidad and Tobago. To rely to put all your eggs in that basket is a bit reckless.
Okay. Let me just clarify something on that, which I feel very strongly about. One, they're not putting it only on Dragon. The mistake they made is that they presented it as it was deceived. They sold that story to the public. Okay?
Yeah.
Because you do have Coquina, which is another cross-border, and you do have Manatee. But even even though it's not on his website, he said, I didn't see it, but I saw it in his Central Bank report, that even when they do start production, when they thought they could start production, it would only be about 150 million cubic feet per day. We have a shortage of over 2.4 billion cubic feet per day. So even if you came up, and what they said is, even if you come up to the maximum in Dragon Field, this is the things they're not telling you. This is what came up. I am not making this up. I read it in the Central Bank thing. I read it. I mean, I didn't make it up. The maximum will be 350, but this is the bad part. And Dr. Ram, I hope he doesn't take offense to me saying of this. He says, too much of our natural gas is going to LNG. What are we? It's like selling cocoa instead of chocolates. We are using most of that gas, all our natural gas from with the Shell and BP. These are the international investors. That is going not to the downstream industries. It is going to the LNG plants. And when they go to the LNG plants, what we are getting into the revenue is nothing compared to what we would get from that same natural gas if we could direct it elsewhere, where we cannot. So it's, that even that LNG thing, even that LNG allocation, even the allocation of the LNG, the natural gas to the LNG with Shell and BP or whoever else is involved, it is not giving us the biggest bang for our dollar, and the largest percentage is going to them. Are we really getting what we should get? And then to sell it to us as the Dragon Field was deceived. They did say that. They did say that. And it's not true. And OFAC, why don't you come and tell the people what is the problem with OFAC? Why can't you tell them what the real problem is? Because it's making you not look good.
Yeah, a lot of emphasis was placed on it, and there's high expectation. I really don't know what to say about that. But we really need to take an urgent look at the future gas supplies for this country, because if we can't rely on natural gas, we need to provide an alternative means of fuel to keep some of these industries going.
Okay, so they're coming to the end, oh Lord. This is what I really want to ask you. Do you think people have said to me that there's a lot of crude oil, a lot of fields with a lot of oil in Trinidad that have not been exploited, especially down in the south. And it is because of the turning towards natural gas, which at the time made sense, that those have been neglected. And that's why the bid round that should have happened for exploration for crude oil really did not happen at the extent. So that the fact that we did not have enough barrels per day of oil also had in part to do to the fact that we put all the eggs in the basket of natural gas, because that was where the money was seen to be made. But
it was monetized.
But now, when things have changed, especially the United States with and the whole world with natural gas and Guyana and elsewhere, is it the neglect of why would there bid rounds for crude oil? And is there crude oil in Trinidad? Are there fields of crude oil that can be monetized, that have not been monetized?
I don't wanna delve too much into that, because that is very, very much speculative. But yes, there is talk that especially on the east coast of Trinidad and Tobago, we have deep water reserves. A lot of times when you actually explore those, like I know there would have been some wells currently being done by EOG and other companies. Yes. And the expectation that they would have gotten to compare to reality is two completely different things when they would have produced the wells. So it's very speculative, and I don't really want to give a definite answer on that.
All right, well, I'm glad for that, because you have answered a question that I didn't think. I wasn't really didn't think. I wasn't so sure that
they're really trying hard. They're really trying hard. I don't know if you're familiar. You have Touchstone now in the country.
I know Touchstone.
Yes, doing land exploration. They just started a well in Tableland. I believe they just commissioned another one out there. You have these independent contractors trying their hardest in the fields to maximize the existing wells. They have some work being done offshore, but we still can't seem to get the production up to where we want it to be. So it seems as though crude is on the decline.
Right.
Yes, there have been talks about reservoirs in deep water areas, but
Yeah,
we
but that's
won't really
expensive
know
to
until,
speculate.
yeah, correct is right. Right? One of these days, I would like if we could have a program where we could discuss some real worker issues on the ground, because yes,
All
the
right, well, that
Petrotrin
will have to be
is
trade
nice.
union. That'll have to be a union conversation. I don't want to mix matters because no. I feel strong. Karen, your guests are very knowledgeable. Whoop, whoop. It
Yes,
was
yes.
such a great business. Why no one interested in mine? Well, we know that isn't
Yeah, we answered that one
so.
already.
Okay, so we could put that down
Yeah.
to put that to rest. In fact, I had read, and I know it's true that a number of refineries are being built now, and I believe
Yeah.
Iran is building one in Venezuela. And anyway, so it's and all this to talk about yes, renewable energy, definitely that's the way we have to go, but definitely the days of hydrocarbons are not over. And so we still have some
That is
years
correct.
again to go, and we have the chance then. What we should be really looking at is finding other avenues to earn foreign exchange and stop trying to defend the indefensible. You know this was coming down the train line. You didn't need your Sina Gonzalez to tell you. You didn't need a crystal ball to tell you because you say it every year in the budget. So when you know that, why don't you pivot to other areas or also diversify more in the energy
That's correct.
sector, in bunkering, etc. That was something Kevin Aaron, right? So I don't want to take anything for that. He had said that on using our expertise in that area. So there's so much more, and we could have a talk on the unions. But remember, when you have it on union, I'm going to ask some hard questions, huh? All right.
I love
So
that question. Bring it.
okay. So
Yeah.
as long as you understand that when we have the
In fact,
conversation,
in
huh?
fact, I wanna it's a discussion that we'll have, but
Mhm.
based on some of the support that you have given us to get the word out,
Yes.
we would also like to invite you formally to an event that we are planning to have on the 28th of this month. So keep that date clear if
Well,
possible,
yeah,
right?
I
And we'll
will
speak more to
definitely
that
be
online,
there.
right?
I definitely will be there. Yes, because I
Correct.
am a child of the oil industry. I am a child of Clifton Hill. Child, I mean, I'm proud to say that my father was, yes, he was a black man, and he reached to the heights that we should be proud as a country that he did that and was able to achieve that for thing, although he probably was on the wrong side as far as you are concerned. Probably on the wrong side, but I don't think he felt so. I think he felt he was doing
Like
his
that.
service to the country, but that's
Yes.
another conversation. But
And
I
we
am
must all be able to debate and speak to each other in a cordial manner.
right. I don't have to put a flag in my yard and say, all that time I was a little child, right? Oh,
Yeah,
real excitement, George
I hear
Bush
that.
marching on our home, and you have police, and that was real excitement. So I am a child of the refinery. I am a child of the oil fields. I
Nice.
relate to it. I'm from deep south, so I understand. it. I have
Nice.
empathy and a sympathy. So yes, we have you on again, but that'll be union talk. But what I like to be is I like to be straight up. If we're talking that talk, we're not coming
Stick
here
to
to pretend that we're not talking that talk. You know what I
understand.
mean?
Yeah.
All right? Coming and talking that talk. All right. So thank you so much, David. You have anything to say? I've got over
Well,
time.
oh gosh, I too am from South partner, and I've worked in the refinery at Brighton and at Point Pear.
Wow.
There are a lot we could have expanded on, especially when you started to talk about the bitumen and stuff and how we produce
That's
it.
his topic.
Because flux oil is what is the real base of the production of bitumen. We know all of that. But what you can do, keep in touch with me, and we'll organize another date, because I told Karen that it's very important that we have you guys on to let the public know.
And what did Karen say?
Yeah, and she was very compliant. She
That's how we do it.
Compliant on your diet. You
she,
using political language there. I was very compliant. I was very excited.
yes,
I'm happy
excited.
to have them on. I said, David, yes, that's true. Keep the momentum. You're right, David. It's true to keep the momentum. Because you know what? We're not there to fight down anybody, right? If the truth comes out and you're not looking good, well, you're not looking good.
Correct.
You just not looking good. Okay, I have to go. It's 6:04 and I'm gonna get
Just
David.
keep in touch with me, and we'll arrange the date. And look, Karen will be excited to continue again.
And I have an invitation, David.
We get the invitation formally. Yeah.
All right.
Great,
So,
great. We look forward to that.
all right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take
Take
care,
care.
gentlemen. Yes.
So
That's it for today's edition of Hard Talk with Mr. Jackman and Mr. Dobson, and of course, Karen being the host. Karen will be back next Monday with more on Hard Talk right here at Power 102 Digital.